a task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. Report. Content warning. Report contains discussions of racial discrimination, sexual assault, torture, lynching, and other forms of extreme violence. The report contains unedited historical quotations and photographs of white supremacist hatred, torture, lynching, autopsy, and other forms of graphic violence.
IV. Climate change. Research on the concrete and worsening effects of climate change has made clear that harmful health and environment-related effects of climate change will be experienced by all Americans. 109 These effects include increased range and incidence of infectious disease vectors like ticks, mosquitoes, and avian-borne pathogens, and decreased food quality and security. 110 Rising sea levels will damage coastal communities and reduce water quality and availability. 11 Extreme weather events, like floods, storms, fires, and extreme heat waves are projected to occur more frequently and more severely. 12 All Americans will be at risk of these harms, but not all will face that risk equally. Communities that are already socially and economically struggling, including the urban poor, communities of color, the elderly and children, agricultural workers, and rural communities will shoulder a disproportionate burden of these hazards. 113. Nationally, formerly redlined areas consistently show hotter temperatures than other areas. 114 Therefore, climate change is certain to exacerbate existing, historically codified disparities that track existing housing-related harms experienced by African Americans. 15 In particular, so-called heat islands, which will worsen due to climate change, exist where built-up urban areas have few trees, vegetation, or parks that serve to dissipate or reflect heat, and instead have pavement and building materials that absorb and retain it. 116 Federal Environmental Protection Agency studies have found heat island effect can cause urban areas to be up to 7 degrees hotter than outlying areas during the day and up to 5 degrees hotter at night. 17 African Americans disproportionately live in such heat islands, experiencing higher temperatures on extreme heat days due to a lack of adequate tree cover. 18 In a study of 108 urban areas nationwide, including several in California, the formerly redlined neighborhoods of nearly every city studied were hotter than the non-redlined neighborhoods, some by nearly 13 degrees. 19 Aside from tree cover, other features of the urban landscape in black neighborhoods, most notably, roadways and large building complexes, also absorb and slowly release heat, which also exacerbate heat islands and their effects as discussed above. 120 Greater presence of trees in a community has been shown to correlate with lower asthma rates, fewer hospital visits during heat waves, and improved mental health for the community's residents. 121 There are a variety of reasons for this, but the most significant is the prevalence of shade that trees create, lowering temperatures and providing a less oppressive environment during particularly hot days. 22 Conversely, the heightened temperatures in heat islands has led to higher rates of heat-related adverse pregnancy consequences for Black women, including premature births. 123 Elected officials have recognized that the issue of shade and heat islands is connected to social justice, with those facing the greatest risk as a result of these disparities often being the most vulnerable members of a community. 124 Association between parks and green space with wealthier, whiter neighborhoods is so strong that even modern efforts to add green space to largely black neighborhoods sometimes involve racist narratives. Local efforts portraying green revitalization plans as benefiting primarily white residents even in black neighborhoods. 125 Such revitalization plans can also lead to the backlash and suffering of black residents in these gentrifying neighborhoods. They can be treated as suspicious by local government and new residents when they take advantage of newly constructed parks and other green space. 126 Black residents of areas without tree cover have also faced gentrification and unaffordability as a consequence, intentional or inadvertent, of local government efforts to add green space. 27 Californians experience these disproportionate harms in many ways, many attributable to the decisions of state and local governments. As the case nationally, redlining had the effect of clustering Black Californians in urban centers that often constitute heat islands, and the worsening heat waves caused by climate change will impose disproportionate health burdens on Black Californians. 28 A 2009 report published by the University of Southern California, The Climate Gap, Black residents of Los Angeles are already almost twice as likely to die during a heat wave as other residents because of the heat islands, attributable to a history of redlining and segregation. 129. To the California Department of Public Health, Black Californians are 52% more likely than white Californians to live in areas where more than half the ground is covered by impervious surfaces, asphalt and concrete, and where more than half the population lacks tree canopy, by definition, the characteristics of a heat island. 30. This disparity is particularly pronounced in the greater Los Angeles area, where wealthier white areas have triple the amount of tree cover compared to poorer black neighborhoods. Of 108 urban areas nationwide, including several in California, the formerly redlined neighborhoods of nearly every city studied were hotter than the non-redlined neighborhoods, some by nearly 13 degrees. 131. This may be directly attributable to government action, since the city of Los Angeles intentionally kept tree growth to a minimum in black communities where police officers expressed a concern, realistic or not, that trees could serve as places to hide drugs or weapons. 132. California Department of Public Health has warned that, as heat waves begin earlier in the season and last longer, heat-related deaths are growing disproportionately more common for certain racial or ethnic groups, particularly Black Californians. 33. Exacerbating these harms, Black Californians are less likely to have air conditioning, a car to access cooler areas, government-sponsored cooling stations, and are more likely to have one or more chronic health conditions. 34. For example, in South Los Angeles, a disproportionately black neighborhood, nearly 3/5 of households have air conditioning in 2020, a number which has not substantially changed over the past decade even as heat waves worsened. 135. These patterns have been seen across the state during heat waves, in which Black Californians consistently experience heightened rates of emergency medical visits and hospitalizations compared to white Californians. 136.